Keep it.
She looked me in the eye and said, "I can't do this, not again." I smiled, handed her the keys, and walked away. Sometimes, letting go says more than holding on ever could. The rain tapped softly against the cafe windows as I waited at the corner table. She walked in, shaking off her umbrella, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. There was a quiet tension in the air, a hesitation I had seen before, but never fully understood. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I think we should just stay friends," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my expression calm, though my chest felt heavy. I wanted to ask why, to hear every word she had buried in the past, but I stayed silent. There was a pain there, a shadow she carried with her, and I could feel it. She had loved and lost before, and the fear in her voice told me she wasn't ready to risk it again. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care about the past, that I only care about her now, but I knew it would not help. Sometimes words were too loud for what the heart felt, so I smiled gently and reached for my coffee, watching her hesitate, knowing that this moment would change everything between us. I remembered the first time she told me a little about her past, though the words had come slowly, like drops of water through a cracked pipe. She had loved once, deeply, completely, and the memory of it still lingered in her eyes, even in the quiet moments we shared. He had been everything she thought she wanted, funny, kind, and alive in a way that made the world feel smaller and brighter. But love, she had learned, could also leave wounds too heavy to carry. He had gone, suddenly and without explanation, leaving her heart bruised and fragile. After that, every promise of happiness had seemed temporary, and every smile from someone new felt like a risk. She carried the memory carefully, tucked behind walls she had built to protect herself. I could see it in the way she laughed with caution, in the way she hesitated before letting anyone in. There was a sadness there, but also a strength. She had survived, even when the pain could have swallowed her whole. I thought about the little things she shared, the texts she never sent, the nights she spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if love could ever be kind again. It was not bitterness that shaped her, but fear, a fear that anyone who loved her might leave her broken once more. And yet, even with all that, she was here, smiling at me across the cafe table, carrying her past like a quiet shadow, asking me to simply stay by her side as a friend. I stared at her across the table, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup without thinking. My heart wanted to reach across and hold her hand, to tell her that I didn't care about her past, that I only cared about us now. But my mind knew better. Pushing her would only make her retreat further into herself. We had shared so many small moments, late-night walks, endless conversations about everything and nothing, laughter that lingered long after the moment passed. I remembered how her eyes would light up when she discovered something new, how her laughter could make even the dullest day feel bright. Those memories made letting go harder. But love was never just about what I wanted. It was about understanding her, about seeing her pain and choosing patience. I wanted more than friendship, yes, but I could not let my desire overshadow her needs. To force her would be to betray the trust she had already given me. I thought about the time she had flinched when someone got too close, the subtle signs of caution she carried like a shield. I wanted to tell her that she was safe with me, that nothing would ever hurt her here. Yet even as I longed to speak, I stayed quiet. Sometimes love meant stepping back. And so I simply sat there, letting her words sink in, feeling the weight of what could have been, and realizing that my care for her meant giving her the space she needed even if it broke my heart a little. We stood at the doorstep, the air thick with unspoken words. She held the keys in her hand, twisting them nervously, her eyes avoiding mine. For a moment, I thought she might change her mind, might tell me that the past no longer mattered. I can't, she said softly, her voice shaking. Not again. I'm not ready. I felt a sharp ache in my chest, but I swallowed it down. Anger, frustration, even sadness. They all washed over me, but I refused to let them show. This was not about me. This was about her and what she needed to feel safe. I reached out, gently took the keys from her hand, and smile not a bitter or sad smile, but one full of understanding. I know, I said quietly. I just want you to be happy. That's all that matters. She blinked, a mixture of relief and regret crossing her face. For a brief moment, our hands touched as I handed them back to her, and I felt the weight of everything we had shared. It was heavy, but it was real. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You don't have to be, I replied. None of this is anyone's fault. Life just works in its own time. I turned to leave, feeling the rain beginning to fall again, light and steady. I glanced back once. She was standing there, keys in hand, a fragile smile on her face. And in that moment, I knew that letting go was the kindest thing I could do. Love sometimes meant stepping back, even when your heart wanted to step closer. And with that thought, I walked away, leaving the keys and a part of my heart behind. The rain had turned heavier by the time I stepped onto the empty street. Water ran in rivulets along the pavement, carrying the faint smell of wet earth and city lights. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I kept moving, letting the rhythm of my footsteps match the quiet thrum of my thoughts. I thought about her, standing there with the keys clutched in her hand, fragile and strong at the same time. I wonder if she would ever understand what I had felt in that moment, the mix of sadness, care, and a kind of love that didn't demand anything in return. Letting go is supposed to be simple, but it never is. As I walked, memories played in my mind like an old film. The late nights we had spent talking about dreams and fears, the small jokes that only we found funny, the quiet moments when no words were needed, just the comfort of each other's presence. I could feel her laughter echoing behind me, a sound I wished I could carry with me forever. Love, I realized, was never about possession. It was about understanding and patience, about standing beside someone even when they could not yet stand with you. She had asked for friendship because her heart was still healing, because the past had left its mark, and I could not fix that. No one could. All I could do was respect it. The rain soaked through my coat, but I barely noticed. The wetness was nothing compared to the ache in my chest, a dull, steady reminder of what I had given up willingly. And yet, amidst the sorrow, there was a strange peace. I had chosen to care for her, without expecting anything in return. I had chosen to let her go, not out of weakness, but out of love. I paused at the corner, looking back toward the cafe. The lights reflected off the wet street, blurring like memories, and I smiled softly to myself, knowing that some bonds are stronger when they are free, and that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is simply walk away. Days passed, and life carried on around me like the quiet hum of the city. I went through the motions, work, errands, the ordinary routines that now felt heavier because she was not a part of them in the same way. Yet, in the silence, I felt her presence everywhere. A cup of coffee left on the counter reminded me of our late-night talks. A song on the radio brought back her laugh, soft and hesitant, lingering in my memory. I thought about the keys I had left behind, sitting on her counter like a quiet promise I would never claim. It was strange how something so small could hold so much meaning. They were more than keys. They were trust, hope, and the unspoken understanding that sometimes love is not about possession, but respect. Every time I remembered her smile, I felt a mix of sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow because I could not be the one to chase away the shadows of her past. Gratitude because I had been allowed to see her light, even for a moment, and I realized that our story did not have to follow the usual lines of romance to matter. It mattered simply because it was real, because it had taught me patience, compassion, and the quiet courage of letting go. I walked through the city streets one evening, the lights reflecting on wet pavement, and I felt at peace. The ache in my chest was still there, but softened, a reminder of something beautiful I had been lucky enough to witness. And somewhere, I knew she was smiling too, free from pressure, holding her own strength. I did not know what the future would bring. Maybe we would grow closer. Maybe our paths would remain separate. But I carried her with me, not as a possession, but as a part of my heart that would always stay, quietly and gently safe.